The stage lights dimmed, the roar of the crowd deafening. Yet behind Olly Pearson's dazzling smile, a storm raged unseen. Years of sacrifice, fear, and unspoken pain had led to this moment, the one everyone believed was triumph. But no one knew the cost. A single misstep, a fleeting note, a harsh judgment could shatter it all, revealing the raw vulnerability hidden beneath the polished exterior. What Britain saw as charm and effortless talent was, in truth, a carefully guarded armor, stitched together with doubt, anxiety, and relentless drive. Who is the man behind the golden voice? And how did the glimmer of fame mask the haunting shadows that threatened to consume him entirely? This is the story Britain never saw. The house was quiet, almost unbearably so, as if the walls themselves held their breath in anticipation. Dim light filtered through the curtains, casting pale, uneven patterns across the floorboards. In the small, unremarkable town that cradled Olly Pearson's childhood, life seemed ordinary to outsiders. But within those narrow corridors, a storm of emotion brewed. Olly moved silently, feet barely making a sound on the worn carpet, a voice trembling with potential and fear. He would often sing alone in his room, the notes rising and falling like fragile glass, echoing against the plaster walls. Each melody was a balm and a reminder of what he could achieve and of what he might lose. At school, his talent was undeniable. Teachers whispered in hallways about the boy whose voice could stop a room. But applause, so warm and inviting to others, felt like a weight on Olly's shoulders. Behind each bow and every clapping hand, there lingered an undercurrent of anxiety, a quiet, gnawing question. Am I enough? His parents, though affectionate, carried their own silent battles, their love unintentionally wrapped in expectation. Each compliment from them, though meant to encourage, felt like a measurement, a standard he feared he could never fully meet. In local competitions, Olly stood center stage, the bright lights blinding, the audience a sea of faces that melted into a haze. His body was tense, every muscle coiled, every breath measured. The voice that could enchant thousands outside these walls often quavered in private moments, betraying the turmoil that no one else saw. In those fleeting seconds before the first note, his mind flooded with memories of rejection. Small cuts from classmates, overlooked achievements, the silent judgment of a world that seemed ready to notice his flaws before his strengths. Each song was a battle not for fame, but for survival, a fight to affirm his own worth. And yet, even in this crucible of fear, a spark burned. A relentless yearning for recognition, for connection, pulsed beneath the quiet exterior. That spark became both a guide and a threat, promising brilliance but warning of the fragility that accompanied it. The world outside would only see the polished performance, the charm and the melodic control, never the nights of tears, of whispered prayers to be seen, truly seen, for who he was. Then came the call, sudden, electrifying, a whisper of possibility in the dead air of his small life. Britain's Got Talent wanted him. The opportunity promised a stage brighter than anything he had ever imagined. Yet it carried with it the first real test of his resilience, the first challenge to the careful armor he had built around his fragile heart. And in that moment, Olly stood at the edge of everything he had ever wanted and feared. The lights of the Britain's Got Talent stage hit Olly Pearson like a wave, blinding yet exhilarating. Cameras swiveled, the audience erupted in applause, and the murmurs of judges rippled across the studio like an undercurrent of judgment. Every sound was magnified. The click of heels on the polished floor, the rustle of programs, the collective inhale of hundreds of strangers waiting to decide his fate. Olly's heart hammered, a relentless drum that threatened to drown out the very voice he had spent a lifetime nurturing. Yet when he opened his mouth, the voice came, clear, controlled, hauntingly beautiful, and the audience rose as one. It was intoxicating, this sudden gravity of attention, the affirmation he had craved since childhood. For a fleeting moment, he believed he had finally arrived. But the stage was also a cage. Each standing ovation came with invisible chains, expectations stretching like steel wires around his mind. Behind the cameras, between rehearsals and interviews, Olly grappled with isolation the public could never see. The laughter, the applause, the lights, they were intoxicating, but they could not fill the hollow space inside, the quiet terror that his success was always balanced on a razor's edge. Every misstep, every quaver of a note, every judgmental glance of a critic could shatter the fragile construct of his identity. His body and mind were locked in constant tension, a fight between the person the world saw and the person he feared he might truly be. At night, the hotel room was silent but for the hum of the city below. Olly would sit on the edge of the bed, the applause still ringing in his ears, his hands trembling, fingers tracing invisible patterns on the sheets. Memories of childhood inadequacy, of whispered criticisms and unspoken rejections, surfaced relentlessly. The very voice that enchanted millions was also a mirror, reflecting all the insecurities he had tried to bury. The fear of abandonment, of failing to live up to both his own standards and those imposed by others. He felt as though he were suspended in a pressure chamber, each breath heavy, each heartbeat a reminder that perfection was expected and failure was unforgiving. Interactions with fellow contestants were brief, polite, but Olly often felt a quiet detachment, an invisible barrier isolating him even among peers. Friends he had made before the show drifted into obscurity. The world outside the studio became distant and muted. Fame, for all its glittering allure, magnified every insecurity, making him feel both omnipotent and powerless simultaneously. He existed in two realities, one of public adoration and one of private torment, each feeding off the other in a cycle that threatened to unravel him entirely. And then came a backstage confrontation. A judge's comment, sharp and probing, puncturing the delicate armor he had constructed. The applause faded in his ears, replaced by the pulse of panic and doubt. Every fear he had carried since childhood surged to the surface, unrelenting. Would the world see him as the flawless performer or the fragile boy beneath the surface? The answer teetered on the edge of a single moment, waiting to tip. Fame for Olly Pearson was a double-edged sword, radiant on the outside, corrosive beneath. Each applause, each glowing review, was a fragile veneer stretched over a growing chasm of exhaustion and anxiety. In the limelight, he was magnetic. Effortless charm, flawless tone, and that rare ability to make strangers feel intimately connected. Yet behind the studio doors, the truth was starkly different. The man who could command thousands with a note trembled in silence when the cameras were off. The nights were the worst. Hotel corridors echoed with emptiness, and the distant hum of traffic became a constant reminder that the world outside could never penetrate the isolation that fame had wrought. Relationships strained under the weight of expectations. Old friends and family, once anchors, became distant figures in a life dominated by interviews, rehearsals, and performances. Conversations were punctuated by rehearsed politeness, smiles worn like masks, and the constant undercurrent of fear. What if one misstep revealed the fragile self he so carefully concealed? Each compliment seemed laced with judgment, each public interaction a test of composure. Every performance was no longer just art, it was survival. Olly measured each note, each gesture, against an invisible standard that only he could see. Inside, his mind was a theater of relentless critique. Childhood insecurities, once faint echoes, now roared. The fear of abandonment, the dread of failure, the haunting question, will they see the real me? He revisited memories of overlooked achievements, of whispered criticisms at school, of moments of silence that felt like rejection. These ghosts crept into hotel rooms, dressing rooms, even moments of supposed celebration, infiltrating his joy with subtle terror. Professionally, the pressure escalated. The same judges who had once smiled now scrutinized, the cameras documenting even the smallest falter. Olly's meticulously crafted performances masked internal battles. Trembling hands, shallow breaths, racing thoughts. He moved through the world like a performer on autopilot, afraid that pausing, even for a second, would expose the fragile boy beneath the golden voice. Then, in a single moment backstage, a judge's pointed comment pierced the fragile armor. For the first time, vulnerability was public, uncontainable. Panic surged, Doubt whispered violently, and the applause outside seemed distant, almost cruel in its oblivion. Could Olly survive this exposure? Could he continue to exist in a world that adored him but demanded perfection at the cost of his inner peace? The aftermath of fame was a slow, grinding descent into self-confrontation. Away from cameras and crowds, Olly Pearson faced the relentless weight of his own mind. His once celebrated voice now carried echoes of fatigue, guilt, and loneliness. Every reflection in the mirror seemed to ask the same question. Who am I if not a performer? Nights stretched long and silent, punctuated only by the rhythmic pulse of memories, of childhood fears, missed connections, and the relentless pursuit of validation he had chased all his life. Isolation became both prison and teacher. In quiet hotel rooms, in empty apartments, Olly confronted the person he had hidden beneath the applause. Therapy sessions, initially awkward and foreign, became a lifeline. He began to unravel the threads of anxiety and self-doubt that had accumulated for decades, understanding that the public image he projected was a fragile construct, a veneer over a vulnerable, aching human being. Small acts of courage, a candid conversation, a quiet day without rehearsals, felt revolutionary. Each was a step toward reclaiming himself from the relentless demands of performance. Psychologically, Olly learned the painful truth. Success without self-acceptance was a hollow echo. The pressures of fame had magnified every childhood fear, every old wound, and every hidden insecurity. And yet, in the midst of this struggle, something new emerged. The realization that vulnerability could be strength, that authenticity was more enduring than perfection. Slowly, deliberately, Olly began to reclaim his voice, not for an audience, but for himself. The notes he sang now carried more than talent. They carried truth, memory, and a fragile but growing sense of resilience. This period was not free from turmoil. Old relationships had fractured under the strain of fame, and the fear of failure lingered like a shadow. But with each confrontation of fear, Olly's identity shifted, reshaped not by applause or judgment, but by self-awareness and courage. He discovered that artistry was not measured in perfection or popularity, but in the willingness to be wholly human. And then a new opportunity appeared, quiet but irresistible. A chance to return to music, to perform on his terms, to reconnect with his purpose. The stakes were higher than ever. The past whispered warnings, and the shadows of old insecurities lingered. Yet, for the first time, Olly felt a tentative control over his narrative. Years later, the story of Olly Pearson is not simply a tale of television fame. It is a testament to the fragility and resilience of the human spirit. Standing in quiet rehearsal rooms or performing to smaller, more intimate audiences, Olly reflects on the echoes of his journey. The applause, the heartbreak, the isolation, and the moments of silent triumph that no camera ever captured. The public saw a polished performer, a golden voice, but behind that perfection was a man who had waged a lifelong battle with doubt, fear, and the relentless pursuit of validation. He remembers the hotel corridors, empty and suffocating, the whispered criticisms of childhood, and the moments of private despair that no one else could witness. Each note he sang on stage was once a lifeline, a plea for recognition and understanding. Now, with distance from the intensity of television fame, Olly can appreciate those moments not just as performances, but as milestones of survival. He has learned that vulnerability is not weakness, and that the truth behind artistry lies not in flawless execution, but in the courage to reveal one's inner self, however fragile it may be. Relationships once strained by fame have been cautiously rebuilt, and Olly finds solace in small connections, in honest conversations, in spaces where he can exist beyond expectation. His music, once a vehicle for public validation, now serves as a bridge to authenticity, to self-expression unshackled by judgment. He has discovered that the greatest stage is not illuminated by spotlights, but by the acceptance of one's own story, scars and all. Even as he celebrates this hard-earned peace, whispers of new challenges linger, creative projects, the unpredictability of life, and the ever-present tension between public persona and private self. Yet Olly approaches them with a tempered strength, having endured both adulation and despair, having faced the shadows of his past and emerged with a voice that is his own.